All right, so for those who don't know me, my name's Josh, and I work with ENC Strategy. I'm the Senior Director for Communication Services there, essentially run client services for ENC. And so I've been in touch with John and with Renee on a lot of other things and kind of got engaged about working with the SIGs on the data sheets today. So I think we're supposed to go through some rules of engagement. I guess my only rules of engagement are to stop me if you have an idea or feedback on something that I'm talking about. Feel free to just kind of jump in and we'll take notes and compile everything when we're done and figure out where to go from there. The real purpose, though, I think is to take these individual data sheets for each of the SIGs and turn them into pieces of collateral that have the type of messaging you really want and need to recruit new members. And I think in talking to John and Renee and Sherry that's really the desired outcome of these specific pieces, is that you want to bring more people into the individual SIGs and really use these as recruitment pieces. So we'll talk a little bit in terms of general feedback in a minute, how to do that. And so that's not kind of how I plan to go, but feel free to stop me if anybody, again, has anything they want to throw in there. But really want to just cover general feedback. I've had a chance to read through all, I think, 6 of these. I think that includes the acquisition one, maybe. So I've read through all the data sheets. I've read through the umbrella SIG messaging that Sage put together for you guys, and ready to kind of provide a little bit of general feedback, because I think overall you have the content you really need to describe what you do. It's just a matter of kind of sharpening the spear a little bit, and then figuring out how we work some of this umbrella messaging. There's the SIG participants side there. Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me, I don't think I've seen the SAGE messaging part, unless it was part of the distributed materials.
It was not included in the original one. I'll send that out.
Okay.
So yeah, so that'll be a helpful piece, I think, for everybody to see too, because there's actually a column in that core umbrella messaging for SIG participants, and so I think some of those bullet points are actually going to be really helpful for addressing that audience in these data sheets. So we can dive into some of the kind of overarching feedback, because I do feel like a lot of this applies across the board and would just make all of these stronger pieces across the board. And then the individual tweaks, really, like I said, not a lot to be made there, because you kind of have the content that explains what you do, but it's really a matter of how do you arrange the content, how do you sharpen the tip of the spear to really do what these want to do. The way these are currently structured, when I went through them, I think they do a good job of saying, what's your goal, what do you do as a SIG, but if the purpose is to really get more people to join the SIG, then we need to get that up front a little more, and kind of make that a little more hard-hitting from the beginning. Anything before we dive into kind of general feedback? Okay. So general feedback, and it's projected up here for those who are in the room, but really, incorporate more of the messaging that was created for this target audience early and often. So for those who haven't seen the SAGE messaging, I'll just kind of read through a few of the bullet points. They arranged it into 3 columns. One for ACT-IAC leadership, one for member companies and agencies, and one for SIG participants. And that SIG participant column is really your target audience here for trying to recruit new members. And there are bullet points there that I think are really good and really helpful, such as, and these are divided into what is someone's goal when they join a SIG, and it's become a leader and an authority, further their professional development goals, contribute to public service. And it goes down the list into things like, what are their needs? Elbow-to-elbow mentor access, networking into the larger world beyond today's to-do lists. Right, so there's some key kind of bullet points there that I think we can pull out and weave into the content of your data sheets to really address that audience and sort of what they're thinking as they come into this. So that's the first piece of feedback overall.
Should this be an interactive event? Can you tell us when you're prepared to take any kind of questions?
Sure. Any time actually is fine. If anybody wants to jump in with feedback or questions, And then once we kind of go through the overall feedback that applies across the board, we can also go sheet by sheet as well and kind of ask these questions at the top.
Okay.
But certainly feel free to jump in anytime. So the second kind of piece of overall feedback was really just to consider making the benefits and how to get involved in a SIG clearer up front. So for example, on a lot of these sheets, I think the benefits are on the second page. And we tell people that they can join the SIG. I don't know if this one actually says it anywhere. This one doesn't. Some of them do. But it's almost always on the second page. How to get involved, right? And it says take part in monthly program events, suggest initiatives or special projects, for example, in this one. But it doesn't say send John an email right now or whoever you need to email right now to get on that SIG, right? So kind of making that call to action a little more upfront, a little more direct from the get-go, I think would be helpful.
Excuse me,
yes.
We were following a template,
Sure.
and which is okay, and I'm happy to get better guidance than that template got. But it seems to me we were trying to answer the question, what is in it for me first, and then how to get involved. And I realize it doesn't, because if you try to start with how to get involved, or what you will be doing, I think the punchline of what's in it for you, what benefits you achieve.
I agree totally. I think the what's in it for you, the benefits are number one, definitely,
Okay.
to bring up.
The call to action
Yeah.
had to be up front.
Maybe in the headline or somewhere in the top right that you're going to want a strong call to action. Rather than, a lot of these start out with what's the description of what the SIG does, which is information that can be in there and that they can find in various places. But yeah, definitely benefits up front, what's in it for them. And then let's sharpen the spiral nose. You know, what are there's a lot of, some of these talk about, well, you're going to help government advance its mission or whatever, and obviously, yeah, that's the end goal. But is it that altruistic? When people think about joining a SIG, is that really the benefit that rings true with them? What are the real reasons behind why they join a SIG? And so I think you're right. Let's get those more up front. You know, what's in it for them, and kind of appeal to their needs.
Should, because the SIG supports both government members and industry members, should we try to distinguish the benefits to each one of those separately, and with just one real quick, hard tagline that says, if you're in government, you will receive XYZ from this SIG engagement.
I
if
would.
you are in industry, you will receive XYZ from this engagement, right?
I definitely would segment the audiences out.
Would you?
Yeah.
Because
the benefits are different.
Going through these, and perhaps before we wrap today, maybe think about some ways to do that, because we have to be very cautious of our government members. We know that as much as they want to give to government, they're already giving to government because they're in government, right? I mean, they are already, their whole life is government right now. So it's got to be more than just given to government.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could think of some ways that and we'll think of that too when we're sitting here. Yeah.
What
So
we're seeing on membership in government, first of all, it's lower than we would like. When it occurs, it's the cross-agency collegial activity that they can't get in their day job most of the time. It's the senior level people who get to do the cross-agency collaboration, and the intermediate more junior people who might be able to actually help us write and build things don't get that opportunity. At least that's from my small slice, Jerry.
I think that's an
I agree.
excellent,
Yeah.
excellent statement. Okay,
Agreed.
so I wrote that down.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are, segment those out because the needs are probably going to be different for them. I mean, some of them are going to cross-pollinate, right? Like, it's a good way to kind of develop your professional development goals and that kind of thing, right? And be more appealing to another employer, whether it's a move up to another GS scale or whether it's a move to another company, right? But so some of them will cross-pollinate, but there are examples like that I think are going to be very different for government. So. The third point that I had on the general feedback was just to try to be a little more concise in some places and a little more explanatory in others. Specifically, I think we can cut down some of the paragraphs with a little bit of, we kind of say the same thing twice in a few places. I mean, these are just really high-level, general, not necessarily messaging related, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on them now. Some of the data sheets, too, I noticed spilled over into 3 pages, and I think the goal was to keep these as one front and back. But when I printed them off, I think some of them spilled over into a 3rd page. So we'll have a little bit of tweaking to do there at some point. But the real heavy point here is just to use more concrete examples and language, I think, overall. So rather than to say, and I'll just pull one out of the pile here and try to find an example. We promote game-changing technologies, or we share lessons learned. We identify emerging, and this is from the emerging technologies. I'm not picking on emerging technologies. I think this is across the board, but just kind of let's talk about where we're really innovative and we find a lot of innovative things and we meet and think up innovative ideas. Like, be a little more specific in our language and try to provide a few more examples outside of the recent successes, but just a little stronger, more concrete language throughout whenever we can find an opportunity to do so.
I have a question. From experience, working with SIG and even other trade associations, what I find often is that, this is Tom McCullough speaking for those of you on the phone, I often find that people on the agencies, our government partners, they think that they're the only person experiencing the problem they have, so coming here is a good way to find out what are really the causal or external environmental factors that are affecting what you're doing that you may not be aware, and be aware that other agencies suffer from this problem, so here's a good sounding board to come to at least help you identify what's under your control versus what's not, okay? And sort of get a regeneration in that mode. I find that a good, that's been told to me that's a good benefit from the government. My challenge is, how do I say that more succinctly than what I just did?
Mm-hmm. I think the sounding board piece is the part that I wrote down there. I mean, being the sounding board for government, or serving as advisor. I mean, it's the industry advisory council, right? You're serving as advisors to the government based on your experience in the public sector, whether on the government side or on the commercial side. But
it's also a low risk, high reward.
mm-hmm. I mean,
What does that mean? Okay.
well, it's an
That's a
opportunity to share ideas without fear of judgment, right? I mean, to really bounce ideas off each other, get feedback as to whether your ideas are viable or not, right?
Well, they can participate. What's their benefit? The benefit to an industry participant, frankly, in joining a SIG is understanding your market better, right? You are there to understand the problem
Mm-hmm.
and see and to collaborate and to develop a real solution, because everybody has a slice, right? So we can build better solutions, because I think when we talk about, here's the thing that I didn't see in any of the responses, was that there's no limit to how far these SIGs can collaborate. So the SIG can offer solutions by engaging through the whole organization. So if I were to write that up to my government, think about if you're responding to a proposal, right? And the government saying, how are you going to build a solution? Maybe you don't have all the answers. So you can bring together a team of people that have an optimal perspective. But again, how do you say that succinctly and in certain words? The word collaborate is so overused today. I mean, we use that word every time we read. So how do we say that we can offer a more open forum with your low risk idea, right?
Yeah.
Low risk.
Personal vetting process, yeah.
And you can bring in experts from across industry and across governments to solve a single problem.
I mean, it's almost saying someone has solved the problem you have, so likely, or one like it. So why not come and talk to all the experts in your field to find the solution?
So can we think of something that could be relevant to each of the SIGs shared interest groups, there's a reason we meet together. And I'd like everybody to have one single tagline they also share. And frankly, I haven't put a whole lot of thought to it. I just know it's missing.
Government domain good. Government domain good or the SIG, which you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, so each one of our SIGs has its own domain. But government isn't a single domain, right? And every one of the problems I have ever seen brought forth, there's more than one SIG usually involved in solving it. I don't know how to put that to paper. And
I think that's probably in the messaging what they were getting at when they the first sentence of the full description for the umbrella SIG messaging says that the SIG serve as the solution connection between the challenges of government, the capabilities of industry, and the prosperous and productive future they mutually seek. Solution connection is a little bit of a vague term,
yeah,
but I think that's what they're getting at
I
is
think you're right. That's what they're getting at. And
It does saying that we want to form effective problem-solving teams. Is that?
I like that.
Mhm.
Can we provide the facility to form problem-solving teams? Yes, all
Yeah.
of them do that. Absolutely.
Josh, this is Tom. I could use your advice, we could all use your advice as follows. Not only with respect to the SIG that we've been talking about, but how to really differentiate what the IAC has to offer in comparison to NDIA, National Defense Industrial Association, American Federation for Information Integration. Those are two very similar trade associations. And thirdly, it would be the FFRDCs, federally funded research and development groups, okay? For the government people, if they're being pulled in these different directions too, they gotta know why do they want to spend time with the IAC versus these other points. In some cases there's good answers, but we need to work on that, in my opinion.
I think that's where some of these recent successes and the results come in. And when I talked in the general feedback, I talked a little bit about bringing the examples of what you do a little more to the forefront, differentiating a little more, using that more concrete language. But yeah, I agree. I mean, if you want to differentiate, it's going to be a matter of bringing what have you actually produced. Like, what are the results?
I know also an area, Josh, that we talk about at the executive committee level is the active engagement of government. And a lot of the other associations, government participates or they get reports, but they're not actively engaged.
Mhm.
And I think that's a real differentiator that we see in our
So the term that I use when I talk about the SIGs and ACT-IAC in general to relay that is elbow to elbow.
I like that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's in the messaging too. It's elbow to elbow mentor access.
But it's not just mentor access, right?
Right.
Elbow to elbow problem solving.
It's peer access.
It's peer access.
It's me access.
Yeah. I mean, to government, the benefit to government is providing access to subject matter experts from both
Mhm.
other government agencies and industry without the complexities of their existing world, right?
Have you ever kind of done a persona or profile of the
We
typical
did.
SIG member?
Yes, we did. We did a huge persona. It was what, 2 years ago when we were first working with Sage to engage them to actually do this very first messaging dashboard. Before they did the profile for the acquisition SIG, we sat down. It was almost a year long. It took forever. Do we have some of those personas?
I'm just thinking, for example, if you could go to a government person who you're targeting to try to join a SIG and say, the average member of X SIG has 18 years experience, has ran 2 companies, published here, published there. Provide them with that kind of
No,
profile.
We
did
never
not.
got into that level of detail into real research. No, we did not.
And that changes a lot. Very quickly. There's a buzzword that I'm hearing from
Hold
government.
on, just a second. Who's trying to talk on the phone?
It's Linda. I was just going to ask a question that kind of goes with the persona question or the persona discussion. So, I really appreciate all the information that we're getting on how to the words and how to position. I guess my question is, I would never read this, because I don't read email attached. And so I guess what I'm questioning is, shouldn't we have more web-based marketing that we're using, and how would we take this and apply it to something?
Well, Linda, I think we have to get the message first before we decide on the avenue. And what we are hoping is that we can take this slip sheet. I mean, we do have a lot of our conferences coming up, which are opportunities, and realistically, we aren't seeing a whole lot of activity on ACT-IAC's website. So we'd like to be able to at least
No, and I guess
this.
when I say, and Sherry, I wasn't meaning the website, because you're right, nobody's using the website, but what I read is LinkedIn, I read Twitter, I read my email, the text, and the only difference in the messaging is it has to be a lot shorter and a lot crisper. And so even though, I think we're getting the messaging, I really appreciate this, but I would just suggest, that it's more, we got to take it and make it real simple to get to people.
Well, and one of the things I think that relates to, and to Sherry's point, is coming up with, at the top, the shared interest groups provide, these value adds. That could be something that's featured in the week in review and then allows for each SIG to have their spotlight and their time in the sun. So I think that they're all interconnected, and it's sort of in the same sense of each SIG has their shining moment light points of, here are the accomplishments that then can be taken out and put into social media or, kind of other avenues.
Well, so when and I think that's great, that's a really good idea, but when we're positioning, I agree totally with what everybody's saying. It's not what we've done in the past. It is the event, because I think people are interested, but I think the most important thing is, letting people know how it's affected me, or, how it's affected people who become successful, or, the why federal government would want to participate. And if you can get the right message, you only need like one or two statements that get someone's attention. And so I agree totally focusing on the benefit, and then, get those down, which we've done several times. I was just looking here to see if I could find them. And then, get right into the meat of it, which I think you're saying is the benefit. So I totally agree.
I think too, and well, you had a point too. I want to capture before we. Well, in addition to capturing the benefits, I think up front and going back to the point earlier, we also have to appeal to their needs and kind of ghost their pain points a little bit. So that was actually one question that I was going to kind of lead into is, what are the pain points and what are the primary reasons why you think people don't join a SIG that we have to find a way to sort of address in the messaging and overcome?
Well, I don't think it's just join, right?
Be
Because,
active
for
participants,
example,
right?
CNT has well over 500 members. The question is how many people are actively engaged in the SIG, right? We want government members because those we're leaned on. But even for SIGs who are what I would call the premier engagement SIGs, it's the people that are carrying the load are usually the same people carrying the load. I mean, you see those people, and Robert's in this room, you see those people constantly.
Linda can probably answer better than I, but with the CNT SIG, it's the subcommittee chairs, those committee chairs and co-chairs that are pulling most of the load.
That's
And
right.
some of them have maybe 5 or 6 people come really active at events, and the others are what I call voyeurs. They come and listen, and they benefit, but they don't ever lend a hand.
Well, and I think that's an important kind of tool in the sense that that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to turn people into active participants versus.
So what are the hurdles?
Lawyers, but we just want to make sure.
There are some successful committees, though, and maybe we should take a look at what they're doing. So financial management has 50 or 60 people, and they get a lot of people on their calls. And they actually have a lot
But how many people really contribute to producing stuff? And how
I
many
would say
people are
15
involved?
right now.
Yeah, they
15 to 20.
they have. Like, Linda is correct. There's probably more people in the financial management committee currently engaged than there are in many other SIGs as a whole. They have their high-level leadership that has done a great job at delegating. They remain engaged, but they've sort of adopted the SIG model and just pushed it down. So they have their financial management committee. Within that, there's a Centers of Excellence, Shared Services Excellence working group. There's a Grants Management working group. And then there's various on and off ramps to different projects that are going on at the time.
One of the other things that I agree with what John is saying with the financial management committee, but in addition to that, they have very active government engagement. And I think that makes a big difference too,
Yes.
because they know that the work that they're doing is being requested by government. And as a matter of fact, the loans committee was, I think, the government executive came to ACT-IAC to get engaged in it. So they do have active members. All 60 aren't active at all times, but as a topic comes up in government, the industry folks that have expertise in that topic do raise the occasion and get engaged. So
Is that Adelie speaking?
Yes, that's Adelaide speaking.
The other group that I think that we got a really good participation in initially, and now that we're doing surveys, is the Open API. And I think Adelaide did a really good job of, getting to the meat of why people would want to participate in that group. So I think that's another good example. You asked why people don't do it. I think the biggest thing is because they think it's going to take too much time, and they don't have the time.
How can you
I think
answer
that
that?
often, I was hoping to talk to that. I also run, along with the Open Data Committee, I run a very large social media group. And I know that's outside this organization, but there's some parallels as far as getting people to participate. And I find that usually there is a balance between the amount of time spent to the type of value that you get out of participation. And so it's usually one of those things that people are more inclined to give more of their time, more of their participation, if there are opportunities for either money, power, or glory. And the glory, of course, being part of a team that has delivered something. The toughest thing is keeping the participation and engagement and that carrot out there of the glory of being part of this team that's accomplished something when you're in the trenches trying to get it done.
So we need to address the time consideration. We need to let people know that there are government people involved in these SIGs, because it sounds like that's a motivating factor, and then emphasize that they will get recognition for the work that they do.
That's a great point.
On the time commitment angle, we've tried but not consistently used the idea of sign up for a project with a deliverable rather than sign up for a never-ending committee.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to convince somebody that for the next 3 years you're going to be meeting with us once a month for 2 hours and doing 5 hours a week on a task, and when you got finished with that task, you're going to go on to the next task. If we could package them into
That's actually, and that's one of the points I had in the very last question that I came up with was, what are the tangible responsibilities someone has when they join?
well, hold an event which has a definitive end point, conduct a survey, write a brochure or white paper along.
Request for assistance. So I can share that. My predecessor set up a request for assistance. It's actually a more formal document to try to define what constitutes a deliverable. But that was a big issue. It's been for years, but we got to the point where at least we have the format, we have the content, and we got basically a template to follow. Work with government people to get to that point. And John knows what I'm talking about. And probably have nothing out there that looks at, right? I think John, my predecessor, John Dodd, Mike Cuban, those guys were in depth.
maybe
As far as Jonathan's comments, I think those are really valid, that he meetings. And that's the person that really wants to get the information that's coming out and really wants to be part of the group and can't participate all the time or at this current time, but wants to know that when they're ready, they can get back into it really easily. And so from what I've seen, the committees that have been the most successful have been the ones that have set up regular meetings, and then they have delegated down to other people besides the chairs of the committee work. Because I think that's another huge problem that I used to have with these groups would be, not SIS, but other groups, is that you would participate and you'd put in the time and then nothing would result. You wouldn't be able to actually do anything to get results. So I think delegating down so that people can actually control their destiny and getting things done really helps them. So I think the time's important, but not getting things done is even worse.
Let me just go back, Linda, too, and this is something I know we worked on the C&T SIG. Does it make sense to have language in there about, and volunteers are encouraged to cycle off at the completion of projects and join another group, or, so that we're signaling somehow that it isn't a way.
Yeah, something to that effect may help address the time commitment issue. There may be this myth, this perception that once they join, they're not going to have the time they need to be a member and participate and get value out of it. So I think addressing that in some way.
I think that links to Kim Ellison's point that the time you give is what you get. I mean,
Value add.
But you don't have to sign up for the rest of your life either.
Okay, and here's another plus for the industry people who are new. I will tell you that I came from the CFO space before there was a financial management committee and stood it up. And the reason that we did that was because I was new to the industry. I needed a safe place to learn what marketing was. I needed a safe place to learn what government was because I lived in the CFO shop. So for those people who are new to government, it's a place where they can be lawyers, but really they're just in learning. They're learning the environment. Or maybe seriously, we have people that might be in a different career. Maybe this isn't their first career. Or maybe they're coming back into this career. Maybe this is a place where they can safely engage and not look ridiculous, right? So when you were talking about, who said that, safe place, it's a safe place where they're not judged. It gives them the time to participate and share and learn. It's that real, I spent a year doing nothing but going to different cities.
Just as we said that we might want to say what's in it for government people and what's in it for commercial people, as separate partitions of the membership we're looking for, I think it's very important that we get both kinds of members. I agree with what Linda and you said about people that just need to have a comfortable place, and I conduct another meeting for people involved with software process improvement, and we provide them with a safe place to ask elementary questions and to learn from experts as well as later to contribute themselves. But our pressing need, I thought, was to get more people who could write and meet with government people and help solve problems, and that's a different action of the membership.
And I think it lends itself to the question of, we're talking a lot about the things that the groups are. Do we feel like there is a misperception that, oh, well, I could give my time to this shared interest group, but I'm going to be locked into it, or I don't understand why this group has value to me. Is that?
I think there may be a perception that if you come to a committee meeting and listen to a program, you may get assigned a task, and we try not to do it that way. I mean, so that you can have a lower level of involvement and get yourself comfortable, decide whether this is really something that you want to be involved with before you jump in.
So you can define your own level of engagement.
That's a good.
That's a
way
good,
to
yeah.
describe it.
Well, and also, can I just say, so I love Jonathan. Jonathan is the best person ever that I've ever worked with because he's so good at explaining things And he's, I've never seen anybody work so hard. But Jonathan is kind of scary to people because he's so smart. And so I think what happens with the information sharing stuff, he just
My
gets
resignation will be
Jonathan.
in the email.
Better not be.
Then you think like, well, I'm
No,
going to
I know there's that intimidation factor, but I find the same thing for the other leaders who are pushing the envelope and making a lot of progress. I mean, they have comprehensive understanding of their customers, the problem that they're solving. They know the.
Slow down. Develop a comprehensive.
What
You're
would
saying what these people have. They
non-threatening,
developed it that way.
non-threatening environments that we talk about?
On this point, and I'm not sure it's where it is in the whole point, is, I was thinking about my group, the Open Data Committee, and the people who've kind of come in and out. And one of the things I'm getting out of this conversation is I'm not sure that at any time, kind of from the time that we've had some of our leadership transition, that we've really had any time to create an atmosphere where people could just ask questions or either just get rudimentary knowledge. We've kind of been hitting the ground running and gunning, whereas people who probably have come in and wanted to get rudimentary information about APIs, a lot of the information that we've gotten, we've had to go out individually and get it ourselves and kind of bring it back to the group. So we haven't made the allowance for some time or one of our weekly meetings to just be about, hey, what would you like to know about open data? What would you like to know about API strategies or the digital strategies of agencies?
So is that a potential benefit then, that as a member you would have the opportunity to create your own sessions, create your own agenda for a meeting, and sort of?
And I think that it lends itself.
I think so. I think that could be a real for the agency I work with, the word sales and selling is a bad word, and that's hard for me to say, but I think that's a real selling point for people to come in, because I think many of them may have come in, and the ones who've kind of come in and out, but they've everything's kind of been, okay, we're talking about this and we're doing this, instead of, okay, let's take a breather and really talk about the topic that our committee embraces.
So in the sense of, the conversation, and I've asked a few questions, one of the project teams that I was on, we had this conversation of what it is and what it is not. And I think that that's true. We've talked about non-threatening. I think that it's also not this look of fresh meat or, overexcitement of, oh, great, you're new, and I'm going to take you under my wing, and we're going to run off and do all these projects and work on all these things when I'm here, I'm trying to dip my toe in and see what the temperature is and kind of explore what are my options, what are my opportunities. And I think that that's a huge potential thing, that the descriptions of it is what you get out of it, but yet there is an ease process, or it's not this thrown into the fire idea.
Explore at your own pace or get
Can I-
engaged in your own
Can I
pace.
give you guys an example? Because this one, I think it's just so perfect for me. I work with the intelligence community now, but I've only done so like for 2 or 3 years. And so I started in this group. It's a group, and it's very, very, it's all about the intelligence community. And it was very scary for me to even go the first time, because I knew all these people knew a ton of stuff, and they came from the government. But it was like a round table. We sat around the round table, and what we did was, they started just going around finding what everybody wanted out about the meeting, from the meeting, but you didn't have to participate. And then they started talking, and you could just listen. Well, eventually, after it was once a month, after about 2 or 3 months, I thought, this is great, and so I actually volunteered to take the names. Well, it's gotten so good after about 7, 8 months that now, people like email each, and I'm in the community now. People email you telling you about all this stuff that's going on, and it's like outside the month meeting, but people are sharing like information about opportunities, information about people who change jobs, and I've never seen that kind of openness between competing companies before, and it could be just because it's the intelligence community,
No, it's not.
but it could also be because they made a real effort to try to share information. So I don't know if that's something we can do. I thought about like sending out information about RFPs and stuff like that.
Okay, Linda, I'm going to interrupt you because you said something that you didn't even realize it. What you said was the SIGs offer people an opportunity to develop a network in a community. That's what you said.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think everybody wants. They want to be part of a community, and they want to develop, they want to have that network into their community. So that really is what we're building, is a community. And I don't want to go into the communities of practice or things like that. It's a community of people who care about raising their awareness and about sharing their information and about constant engagement. So you said that. Did you know it? You literally said that while you were talking.
I think,
No, it makes perfect sense.
And that is
I
what you were
feel
talking
like
about.
those.
and by talking about it as a community and then putting those more tangible things, I think, into the messaging in terms of, create your own project, ask questions, be part of a white paper or part of an event, and then you can kind of back off and listen for a little while. Take some of the mysticism away from, well, I'm going to join this committee, and then what really happens when I'm on it, and what are all these academic types talking about while I'm there. You're going to be part of a community, and you're going to be able to participate in whatever way you have the capacity to participate at the time, and there's going to be something tangible at the end that you get a little bit of notoriety for, and maybe learn something in the process.
There was one other aspect that I was going to mention before we got up further down the road, and that was another attribute of these SIGs. I think it's very consistent, is that, and if there's a new buzzword that I'm hearing more and more, especially from government people, that they're typically mission agnostic, which means that when the financial management people are talking, it could be for air traffic control, for the FAA, it could be for the DoD budgeting system, it could be for state or local government. You don't get pigeonholed into a particular mission area like, oh, you're in law enforcement, or oh, you're in intelligence, or oh, you're in defense department. And that cross-cuts the communities that are typically aligned by mission into the technologies or the subject matter that professions are built on. And we've got lots of examples of industry people taking the expertise and moving from customer to customer, or government people leaving one agency and going to another agency. And the mission of the agency changes, but the expertise and the management skills that have been developed in each stage of the career become applicable to the next stage. And I think that's one of the things people are looking for. They're willing to put in their time, but they'd like to say, well, it's another part of what's in it for me, my own professional development. For some of them.
To Jonathan's point, to expand on that, I know over the years that the enterprise architecture say we've emphasized, as Jonathan said, mission agnostic and also tool agnostic and vendor agnostic. Okay, they don't come and promulgate or hype other people's companies, so to speak. That's the form we set. We try to abide by.
Well, I think you mentioned something which is remove the mysticism. People see our community as a frightening community to engage in. I will tell you that. There's a lot of businesses that have problems engaging with us because they think it's cliquey. Well, it's because they don't really get down in the weeds, right? They go to the few meetings that we have that they see, quote, are act by act, and they don't really explore our community of SIGs. And I think that if we allow the SIGs to be that pull the blinders off, remove the mysticism of engaging in ACT-IAC, right? That's what they allow us to do. There is no mysticism here, right? But a lot of people feel like it's clicky, all right? I've heard it more than once.
Well, but I wouldn't say that that's necessarily discouraging.
But everybody's clicky, but they can still engage. If they want to engage, if they bring forth an idea, nobody's going to lock them out.
Well, it's a fact that most of the businesses are small businesses
Yeah.
that are in ACT-IAC. And what happens is, a small business joins for a year, and then they drop out. And because they're not getting anything from the work, and they don't know who they are. And really, if we could get more people to engage in the SIGs, we're not gonna have a turnover.
I agree with you. Absolutely agree with
So
you.
the messaging, to me, here we got the expert here, and she's telling us this, but the messaging should be, really, what's the benefit? Why do I want to engage? And, you know, really, that's probably the two main things. You know, the stuff about what we've done in the past, that's all fine and dandy, but quite frankly, what are we doing now?
Right.
How do I, you know, and then you said, how do I engage? And I'm looking at our MTC one, it's the last thing, you know? It probably should be the first thing, you know?
Well, I think that to Joshua's point, the very first thing he says is you got to take benefits and move it to the top.
And, that was on our second to last thing.
He didn't want to pick on you more, but you got to take those benefits. And I think what we've done here in this last hour is really try and tease out the benefits. And I think we've done a very good job of that. So why don't we talk about some of the other things? So we talked about identifying the business, the benefits, identifying up and coming, what do you have to offer, right? So you're saying, well, don't talk about what you've done. Well, you know, reality is you can't prove your benefit until you prove your value, right? And value means what somebody else's perception. So you're gonna have to convince this guy that you're a valuable resource to them. You are a valuable resource to them, not them a valuable resource to you.
And I think that's not grounded in a project or a person, a participant in that. I think that it's true, when we talk about it agnostic, I mean, I feel like you can't just say, well, we're doing NS 2020 and therefore, you know, come join us. It's broader.
Because if they're, you know, if the only thing you do is NS 2020 and they say, I'm not interested in NS 2020, you're not gonna see them. You're not gonna see them again, right?
That's why the MTC, that's why we've done programs on wireless, that's why we do programs on cheap time, that's why we do programs on cable. Maybe boring as crap to some people.
Some of these small businesses,
If you're a
it's
cabling
important.
company and you wanna do business with the feds, you know, they have a 10-point come in and talk about different wireless projects that he's got going on. That's how we get on this. And so what's the value? You get to meet guppies at fairly high levels who have programs that you might actually put to work on.
Well, what's the value to a government member? What's his value? You hit me, you convinced me that if I had a network or telecom company, you're the people I want to talk to if I want to do government business. Government, federal.
What I've found is if for at least our GAP members, and I'm only into SIG, so you know, I pay attention to the other SIGs and don't really care. But what I've seen with our GAP, and we'll take it Tim Quinn, Tim will tell us in a open forum what he's got going, what his pain points are, and he does get the cross pollination with Cerritos or whoever, and those guys, you can see over the years, because of ITPA and IAC, those guys are cross pollinated.
So what's his
And
benefit?
his benefit is he gets to know what's going on at other agencies. He also gets to know other people at his level where he can get a job if he wants to do a transfer. I mean,
I
that's,
love a person that speaks their mind.
well,
It's true.
I mean, it is what.
Where am I gonna get my next job is as equally important to the government as it is to industry.
Well, those dudes work in government, they're working for different reasons, maybe than what the private sector is doing. And it's all about what they're doing. And they get to do these massive, big programs. And when that programs, when you're done with your program at agency X, if you maybe move over to agency Y, you can see it's of interest for you. And I think IAC is a great forum for that, because you can get it done.
I know you do.
What I did is I went down to, it was right this morning, during this window of time, we really played the other. As 2020 is evolving. And there's a very specific task that the team is very frustrated, a whole broad brush of team members, small, medium, large, happy blood, carrier, non-carrier, neighbor, community, their own. And a very specific task on a jail report, the government asked us for very thoughtful input, that they put great investment of time, Jeff Morgan has laid on this one, fabulous job, very specific task. That's great, that it has the visibility, I'm not sure, talk about this, to the leadership of both Colby, Williams, they're going to senior engagement, we know it's very high. So for the moment, back in Tom office, it's really a safe, it is somewhat opportunity specific right now, and it's coming from the not going away. Huge opportunity, a lot of hill visibility, lots of meetings with IT staff, et cetera. And frankly, it has the full attention of our leadership in that battle. So, as much as Tom's right, we're focused on other areas, but in all fairness, the low-hanging fruit, a rich opportunity to give back and solve problems for government. It's a very specific area. You're right, Mike, a little more of a niche, but I would argue we talk from it by a lot of the agency numbers, the majority probably would be embracing this particular topic.
70 people, on this rule.
The fact that,
Deirdre.
I wanted to call you Deborah and Donna, I'm sorry. Is that the act of leadership takes a vested interest in what the states are doing. It's not just, each Romans can talk to each other.
That's
And
true.
It's
You
somebody.
guys have no idea how much SIGs are actually mentioned during the act board.
And he might have no recognition or thought process of who, the CIO is over at GSA when Casey Coleman was going to be our next leader. But something like that, to be spearheading a program and to have the CIO at GSA or even the deputy CIO to have to know your name and to understand what you're working on, I think that's a huge differentiator.
Okay, so when we get to agnosticism, I like that, and it didn't come up as a misspelling.
Mission to eliminate.
I would say agnosticism is the ability to share insights with subject matter experts from other government agencies and from industry experts. So it's sharing insights, right? Being agnostic allows AT&T to share with CenturyLink, to share with Tom's company, because you guys are all in the same room.
You can share with Lockheed Martin, well.
That's
what that would mention.
Are you on NT-SIG too?
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of different.
There's so many
could resist
people. With other government agencies and industry experts. That's what I tried to do, but unfortunately, because I plugged my phone in, Apple tried to take over my whole computer. So I'm trying to avoid their little Apple. All right.
So I think we've actually almost covered, and then this is why I prefer to have kind of questions and bullet points on a page rather than an agenda, because we kind of end up covering all of them anyway, and you can kind of use it as a checklist. One of the things that we haven't talked about is how much do we need to differentiate between the SIGs and these sheets. And the example, one of the examples that I circled was in the C&T SIG. It mentions that C&T is the home for emerging issues and innovative technologies, and we have an emerging technology SIG. And so I started thinking how different, like if I'm someone looking to join one of these SIGs, how do I know which one I want to join? And how much do we really need to differentiate? Because we made the point earlier too that there's no really limit to the amount of collaboration you can do across SIGs and that sort of thing either. So that's the question: is how much
Well,
differentiation?
I think in that case, you really do have to do some differentiation, and maybe in this case, the tagline for CNT is with why. But it is, CNT has always been the incubator for new interest groups. That's what it is. It's not only carries financial management, information sharing, and these kinds of conceptual program management, things that maybe don't fit explicitly someplace else. It is an incubator, and it has spawned other things, right? So maybe call it the home for emerging technologies might not be too accurate, but.
Well, and I think we had another version, 'cause I noticed that too. And what we try to do is not say emerging technologies. What we try to do is to talk about, we're not looking at the technology as much as looking at the issues, the business need that's creating the need for the technology. But I know it's confusing. The other, who was it? Keith Trippy, I think, asked us, Sherry, if we could put together like a graphical representation of where our committees, what our committees are doing and where they intersect with other SIGs. And so I've actually been working on that, and that was one of the things I was going to talk about in the new business stuff. So.
Hey, Linda, it's Adelaide. I think that's great. And I just wanted to comment, on Josh's question. I think it is good to differentiate the different SIGs, because if you've got new volunteers, and they join a SIG because they think it's doing something and it's not quite there, they may not get to the right SIG. It may not be easy for them to get engaged, and we do want to get both government and industry folks, connected and engaged as quickly as possible. So, the more that you can do to distinguish, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it's eliminating a barrier to entry. We talked about bringing up how do they get involved, what's the actual step they take to join a SIG, right, and bringing that more to the forefront. I think this is just another barrier to entry. If they have to stop and think really hard about which one they're going to join, and maybe they don't see exactly what they do.
Multiple SIGs.
Right.
We want to make sure that they don't feel pigeonholed. All right. Remember, we can't have them pigeonholed. If today, I think, for instance, when we were first starting to talk about the emerging technology of infrastructure as a service, that was like 10 years ago, I joined Emerging Technology SIG because I wanted to understand shared services and how it worked. And I didn't know anything about it, so I joined them. And then I needed to know about financial systems as they're moving into shared services. So then I joined CNT and dealt with financial services. So I think we can't lose sight of the concept that multiple memberships are encouraged, but engagement in bringing forth an idea for an event, for a panel, for a paper, for solving a specific problem is really important. So, the SIG solve problems. We're not just a think tank. I wish we were, but we solve real problems. So we want our industry partners to bring their customers' problems to our table and bring the customer with them. Right? Jonathan's thinking something. I'm watching his face.
I'm agreeing with you about it from the ideal point of view, but earlier we talked briefly about the practical matter of if a new member thinks that they have to go to 2 or 3 meetings every month in order to hit, shared services out of emerging technologies and shared services out of financial management and shared services out of the shared services committee. Then in order to dip their toe, they have to go visit several beaches.
Which is not always bad.
I don't want to take the analogy much further.
I'd like to go ahead and try and get into some individual ones.
Yeah, I think we've covered off on all of the overarching stuff, so we can certainly do that. And I kind of have just the whole stack here, so we can kind of go through one by one if you want to do that.
Just assess and say which one could probably use the most help and just take it.
Um,
Or do they all need about the same amount?
I think it's this general feedback and the things we've been talking about that's really the most important.
Okay.
So I think across the board, they're all kind of on pretty equal footing if we can bring up the benefits and really emphasize this.
Management, who is supported by SAGE, probably needs to take another look at theirs and move those benefits up.
Yeah, I would agree. And even in acquisition management, the direct language from the messaging doesn't necessarily appear in there in a lot of places. So especially that far right. Again, it functions really well as a description of the SIG, but as a recruitment tool for new members, maybe try to incorporate more of those bullet points almost verbatim. I have the acquisition management one here.
Hey, may I make a comment about solving
Yeah.
the problem? A lot of it comes from experience. I've been a member of all the SIG pretty much since day one. I spent more time in enterprise architecture, but in terms of solving the problem, I really think when you look back at what we've really done in terms of value, it's really more that we articulate and decompose the dimensions that really constitute the problem in the first place. And oftentimes people, they just love to hear that. Some people say a problem defined is a problem solved. I understand that, but we really focus on what are the real dimensions of the problem. It's more of a systems engineering type of approach, really. But that's enterprise architecture, now planning and architecture. That's really been more the focus, I think, really. Because we don't implement anything. We don't go out there and develop a plug-in system instance, so to speak. That's a solution to some people, a problem solved to some people. So I think for the venue we address, it's really people come and say, well, help me understand what the problem really is. Okay, it's like diagnostic analysis versus difference between the root cause and what the symptomatic issue is.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think too on the like on the acquisition management one, for example, the benefits are pretty good there. I mean, some of them are very tangible, like earn continuing education credits. That's something that some people actually need to do to maintain their PMP or their FAC or whatever it is.
If we're going to say that, we need to qualify that.
Agreed.
No, they're CEUs. That's what they're called. Period. They are awarded by. They're very
Yeah,
specific.
but you just graded them in the accrediting agency. I'm not trying
They
to.
are rated by an accrediting agency.
So, for example, would a COSE recognize them?
Yeah,
We are now an accrediting agency, so we're certified through ISET to issue continuing education units.
PMI and COSE, they all recognize.
Now,
Yes.
those can be done.
No.
It's
I
all
asked because
SIGs,
it wasn't-
all SIGs now, there are, when you do a program, if you do a program, when you establish, there's certain criteria, that information is out on our website, I hope. But there are certain criteria for developing a program that can be assigned CEUs. And it requires some learning targets. And you know what? Why don't we address that in a later date? And I'll get you some information on CEUs. There's ways that your programs that you give like on a monthly basis, if you work with ACT-RIAC, preceding that program, you can define how your members can get CEUs from attending the program. Okay? Everybody should do that. Every SIG can do that. All SIGs have the opportunity, their leadership has the opportunity to make that happen.
Just to finish off on the acquisition management one, I really liked actually some of the specifics on the second page. For example, providing feedback on SAM updates. So I would actually bring some of those more specific things to the forefront. The second paragraph says that the members are adopters of innovative practices, they solve challenges, and they share best practices. So it's kind of vague. So I would bring those specific things up to the top so that you actually, what are the best practices you're sharing? What are those challenges you're solving? Because all the SIGs across the board are doing that, and that's good umbrella messaging, and it may even be from the messaging, but when you get down to the SIG level, what is the person you're trying to get to join going to be actually doing? The on the human capital sheet,
Who all's around?
is anybody here on?
Bill? That's okay. Does everybody have a?
I'm here, guys. Sorry, I was frantically trying to unmute my button. I am
Okay,
here, and
I'm
it
gonna
comes.
watch that button.
I think the one thing I noticed about the human capital sheet is that the headline just replaces acquisition with human capital. And so I think honing these headlines a little more to directly address the audience, to directly address a human capital audience. So it's not just, again, I don't know that the fostering collaboration headline on acquisition management was the right one anyway. So we probably want to say less about fostering collaboration and more about, again, benefits and have a call to action there. So rather than just kind of using that as a template, and I know this was a template that everybody filled out, but rather than literally interpreting it as a template where you just swap out, I would recommend probably customizing each of these headlines a little bit for your individual audiences. And I thought
That's great feedback. Sorry, you can hear my daughter in the background. By the way, I'm going to fire my communications chair for that oversight. Because that's the kind of tone I want to set as a leader here. Okay, obviously I'm joking. No, that's good feedback. I'll definitely take that back.
And then I actually thought on the human capital one that the bullet points that are given up front are really actually pretty good, because you talk specifically about a forum that you provided or specific organizations that you've worked with on the government side. So I think that appeals to some of the needs that folks have who want to join. I would just recommend tightening them up a little bit, because this one did just barely spill over into 3 pages. Or you could even take the option of maybe taking off some of the recent events or something like that from the bulleted list. And again, the general feedback applies across the board on all of these in terms of bringing up those benefits on the second page. And I know that was part of the template, so that's nobody's fault, but bring them up.
So to further exemplify outstanding leadership here, I'll make sure to take credit for all the good stuff and then throw my team under the bus for the stuff that
I love the human capital, Sig. You personify everything that we stand
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. I'll bring that back to the team.
Let's see, on the emerging technology SIG, just off the bat, I would recommend the headline, kind of clean that up when you do, make it a little more user-centric, and like the EG, S&T directors, all that. We can explain that somewhere if we need to, but just kind of make it more of a direct call to action. I did like on this one, it says directly there, we form committees around and provide insight on high potential technologies. So that's a tangible, you form a committee, right? But what are the other tangible things that you're actually doing? What are the actual actions you're taking as a member of the group, and bring those up. And some of that's in the recent successes as well, so that's good. And this one was one of the shorter ones. I did also notice just a formatting thing on this one. I think the second page, somehow the body copy spilled over onto that right sidebar there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning and architecture. This was another one that just didn't necessarily it just didn't necessarily seem differentiated enough. Yeah. The headline, for example, innovative we use innovative technologies, I think, in almost all of these around everybody. So, and maybe that is a thing that everyone kind of shares in common, but we can find a way to be more specific about what that SIG does in terms of innovative technologies, just to differentiate a bit. Let's see. Okay, so, and I underlined that near the end of that second paragraph there, so the government agencies are better prepared to implement major initiatives, such as the Federal Digital Government Strategy, Shared Services Strategy, etc. I like that this one called out those very specific initiatives that the government has that you're working on with them. I think that's I know from my own perspective, when I worked on the quadrennial technology review paper that I worked on, it was very directly tied to the digital government strategy, which was something I was interested in, and that's one of the reasons that I did it. So I think having those initiatives that you're actually helping government with in here is a good thing for a potential member to see. and I noticed the benefits for planning and architecture. You mentioned networking with influential government leaders and things like that as well.
I
So
got the word interdisciplinary up there, because I think I was influential in getting us to change the name from enterprise architecture to planning architecture. We decided to put planning architecture. We said, we historically have had a focus on systems engineering, enterprise architecture, program management, project management issues, fundamentally, plus internal audit and involved into ITIL. So there's 5 or 6 different disciplines. And I've heard that many people mention the word interdisciplinary, and I think it's a distinctive feature that we have. So I wanted to emphasize that. That's what, that's kind of what drove me
Agreed.
right that way. I actually have to second that. I think
one other thing, just another sort of across the board suggestion that I thought of is to use that sidebar. We kind of have a generic statement of if you're a member, you can join, whatever. Maybe to use that space to put some stronger language in there in case that's the only thing they happen to read, the headline and the sidebar. Because if they're receiving this, they probably are somebody who can join. Let's see, the networks and telecommunications sheet. The main thing that I sort of noticed reading through this one is that it kind of started off a little bit like a history paper, established in 1994, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just kind of pull back on some of the description of the SIG itself and the SIG's history and throw in more, again, like we've talked all throughout the afternoon. What's the benefit? How do I achieve that benefit? How do I get involved closer up front? So just kind of not leading with the history and too much about, but lead with what's the benefit to you.
Relevancy. I mean, you're talking about history, obviously you've been around for a long time because you are relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly, and I think you brought up the point earlier that you know, there's all these have recent successes. They kind of have a past performance element to them, and I think the proof points are very, very important. And then the rich history behind some of the SIGs and some of the things they've done, very important, because you can't make all these claims about it's really going to benefit you if you don't have the proof point to roll up underneath.
As long as you don't focus on it, as long as that's
Right.
not your only focus.
Right.
You know, premier works included, right?
Right.
I think that the network and telecom, with your engagement with GSA for this upcoming procurement, is, I gotta say, it's probably one of the premier opportunities anybody's gonna offer. Okay? That doesn't happen very often. You make your own opportunity. Well, that's because you're brilliant.
Could you look at the benefits and give some suggestions on the benefits?
Reading the benefits, I mean, so the first one, lead and participate in initiatives and studies that improve communication systems for the government. I would tie those back to some of the recent successes. So maybe even consider combining them. I don't, you know, depending on how you like the flow of the template. But you know, when I read that, I think, well, what communication system? Like, what's the proof point behind that? So consider perhaps tying those together.
Those obviously literally to the top, the benefits.
I would, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other, you know, collaborate with peers, attend programs and educational forums. Again, not bad, but then let's also incorporate some of the other benefits that we discussed here and add those in. And then I think C&T is the last one that I have. And just one piece of general feedback that was on the one-pager, but just in terms of, again, it's minor formatting thing, but the headlines, some of them are all caps, some of them aren't. So just in terms of branding and consistency for I. The C&T one doesn't have a headline at all. So we need to figure out what's the big selling point for C&T and come up with a headline for C&T. Because I do think you're going to find that some people just kind of scan these and they're already in a pretty good format. There's a lot of bulletized information ripe for them to scan it, but the more you can get the paragraph breaks in there and have the headlines and use that sidebar area there to present information in case they just scan it. We already talked a little bit about C&T. Again, it was sort of the differentiation between the other ones. And I think the explanation that was provided earlier was a good one, that it's the incubator for a lot of emerging issues, not necessarily the technology around them.
The focus on business.
Can I just ask a question about sidebars, since it's come up a couple of times? I really found it hard to figure out what the difference in pictures would be that would help each SIG's page look different and meaningfully different, because it's talking heads around a table or people in front of a panel, and it doesn't convey very much to me. And I didn't want to get high-techy and put in a diagram of some kind.
When we were doing the exercise with SAGE and the acquisition management SIG, at every time SAGE kept asking for good pictures, and I don't have any. So what we have are essentially, think of these more as placeholders. We want to put real people that, if you...
Well, what I mean is it's high-priced real estate at the very beginning of the front page of the two-pager, and to me, I wouldn't spend it on just generic pictures of people in a meeting.
I tend to agree with that. Even something that's representative of the group, right?
And I'd even put a front page of a report that the group just did, which is related to that group, that would be more representative than pictures.
I could even see these, and on the other, I don't know, the C&T one they're square, but on some of the other ones they take up the whole horizontal space there. I could even see those as promo areas that you change out in the template sometimes. Go download our most recent white paper at this link and have a short link in there for it.
I mean, that's one way of dealing with it. Or if we're talking about cross-SIG collaboration of some kind, or we had a better word than collaboration earlier this afternoon, maybe we could show the relationships of the diagrams, like of the different groups.
Or even some of the projects. What's that PowerPoint that you make with some words are big and little?
Oh yeah, you could do one of those. Word cloud that they used. One of the presentations at the general meeting used. They didn't happen to project very well, but that could be an eye catcher with all your favorite buzzwords in some priority.
What one of the committees is working on, and
Yeah.
I could highlight for that.
I felt constrained by the example template that we had, so I just turned the crank and put in the things in the right spaces, even though I guess if I had been a little bit more innovative, I might have thought about reordering things, but that was one of the things that was most annoying to me, was that we were using...
Yeah, and I would caution against looking at the C&T one, for example. I think the information, especially on the second page, there are a lot of good benefits that they put in there. But again, it's another big long block of copy on a page with a lot of copy on it. So I would caution against using the sidebar areas to do a lot of similarly sized font and filling them with more copy.
I'm not a graphic designer and I don't play one on TV, but it seems to me that some of the results that I got with the CMT SIG version and the Information Sharing Committee version that I tried, it didn't seem to have appealing white space either. It looked like we kept the font size reasonably high, but since we wanted to say so many different things, we put, or at least I'll just say it about myself, I put a lot of information in what I could cram into 2 pages, and I think maybe less information more appealingly presented. And I don't think I can invent all those best ways of doing that, but I think that would be helpful if you can give us some advice.
Yeah, well, I think from a graphic design perspective, the thing to keep in mind is just that people are going to tend to scan and read through and even sort of subconsciously interpret the information based on the size and weight of the type, right? So the most important things in the order in which they should be reading them should kind of go from biggest to small. So your headline is going to be bigger, but for example, the recent successes I think is just bolded the same size as the rest of the copy. If you change that from recent successes to a more action-oriented statement to we've done X, Y, Z for government this year, maybe increase the size of the font a little bit. That way somebody scanning it is going to at least catch all those things on their way down.
Are you getting that, Linda?
Yes, and I have to say most of this wasn't Jonathan's fault. It was my fault because I tried to
such a great.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, I just, Gary Brunel just sent me an example of a format that the White House is using to keep track of their.
John, you have that email, can you open that up? There's some infographics
Yeah, and it's
that,
very.
hold on, let John Shaw bring that up for a second. Give us a second.
Okay.
It's just a link from her email. Give us a second. You have it? You want me to send it again?
Did I send it to the wrong address?
No, it's okay. Okay, so we're showing that here, and what it is this is an infographic that essentially focuses your attention on the message without a whole lot of words. So I think this gets to both Jonathan's point as well as Linda's, which is don't waste prime real estate on a whole lot of words. Treat it like you're going to put it on the web and make it engaging. So even on paper, this looks cool because this is meant almost to be printed. So we'll send that out to everyone. We'll send that out to everyone, but where you have an opportunity to go out and find pictorial content, like networks and telecom. I mean, seriously, the whole world has got network and telecom visuals out there. It's pretty cool. Advanced mobility, there's so many web visuals. Now, planning and architecture, we'll figure that out.
I'm doing what there's not a lot out there, but yeah, you're right.
Well, you know what? There's not a whole lot of sexy pictures for making a good plan, you know? But we'll work on that. We'll have to come up with something really interesting for that.
Yeah,
I'm not real good.
one thing I didn't push on too hard because I'm not too familiar with all the data points that might be available, but those sidebars might also be good areas to do a sort of, in the newspaper sometimes they'll do the whole by the numbers, and it's kind of the same as the how many record high temperatures were broken. So if you have any data like that that relates to how one of your initiatives helped government do something, or we produced X number of white papers or something last year.
Do you see a lot of value of all the SIGs having a very, very similar format, or can you vary? It seemed like when we started with a template, you all got the same width of the right margin, and we were putting the same sort of thing in there, or we tended to. It didn't seem to me that helped us differentiate.
Right.
If you give somebody a stack of 5 of these, they'll all.
I think from an IAC branding standpoint, you're going to want some things to remain consistent, certainly.
Well,
Right, yeah, the top area, your footer. I mean, you don't want it to look like it's coming from a different organization altogether, but
What about, is it wise to consider interleaving information across the different sets of collateral? For example, let's say the X SIG does this, whereas the Y SIG does that.
if I were going to do that, I would almost think it'd be some other separate, rather than muddling them in each other, some other separate piece that kind of lists them out and explains. If you're trying to figure out, maybe it's a flow chart or something, but if you're trying to figure out what SIG to join, here's what they all do, here are the subcommittees, and kind of guides you through that process, almost kind of a wizard of some sort.
I think the work that SAGE did in preparation for the work that they did for acquisitions might be able to be repurposed. If I can go back and find all the stuff they dumped on us over like 2 years, maybe we can pull that together and say, so you want to learn, so you want to engage, so you want to lead, right? I vibe our engage, our learn, our lead. That are on the homepage, engage, learn, and lead, that's what we do here, and want to be able to show them, so you want to engage in a SIG that's caring about X, so you want to do this, so you want to lead an organization that's informing government on human capital. And so then just send them down those paths.
Yeah, as somebody mentioned at the very beginning, what are some other sort of digital means by which you could do outreach for the SIGs and things like that. And again, I don't know the sophistication it would take to do this and the resources, but it would almost be some kind of email that goes, you see the BuzzFeed quizzes like all the time. What character are you from this movie, and that kind of thing. What SIG should you be on, right? And maybe they check their interests off, they check off what kind of projects they like to work on, and then they find out I should be on these two and these subcommittees.
I don't know, I like the by the numbers, USA Today does that well. How about a full, in reporter speak, a full quote from some cool person?
Yeah.
Some quote
Especially if they're
from
government,
outside.
right? Or-
That's what usually helps people read articles and the trade press, but, there's no person attached to this. These are people who are contributing to the success.
I would totally agree with that. Especially if one of the main motivators for getting more government people are to know that there are already some government people they can network with and share ideas across agencies with. That would seem to be pretty appealing.
And I think that to kind of some of the points we talked about, we don't want it to necessarily be, Steve and Rokel, because if I'm, something on the gap, I may not feel like he's my peer, but maybe somebody that, you feel like you can maybe make that connection.
Like on their NTC, some, full quote from recording. They check the people in that space.
Or Mary, when she's
Mary.
engaging with the NNT to bring everybody together. Or I know we have some real stuff that came from energy a couple, year or so ago that says, without ACT IAC, I would not have known. Without ACT IAC, I would not have understood. I mean, that's what we're looking for. Without this SIG, how would I have known?
You think it's important to make the priority areas and kind of show a mapping, of, not of each SIG, but at least pick one or two of the priority areas and how the SIG addresses it, or is that only a concern about the insiders to ACT IAC? The reason I'm asking it is you just mentioned that nice triplet of engage, learn, and lead, and I think of at least some of the priority areas as being just as catchy for some of the
Yeah.
potential SIG members.
Well,
Or is it such a
we're talking about it. We're actually talking about that. We might want to add that on as we go forward. I think the most important thing is to get in place something that we're really comfortable with. The priority areas that have priority area leaders that are really engaged, would love to have that done. Okay. I'm kind of on a burner on that one. I think the priority areas right now have taglines. What happened to those taglines?
We haven't gotten them back yet. I'm one of the leaders for the digital information and innovation for,
Priority area.
And yes, I think, let's get this done, and I think what we do wanna do is tag two priority areas, but I think that's over and above today.
Right.
Especially as this gets on the website, because one of the long-term visions we have is not only to have the priority areas on the landing page for the vision, but to be able to tag to the work that's being done in the SIGs, in the Institute of Innovation, at the conferences. So this will come, and we will want to tag, and as Sherry indicated, let's get this down as a foundation, and then figure out the best way to pull, we've even talked to Mark about if someone says, I want to find out more about digital government and innovation, they could have a choice then. They pull up one of your projects, a project over there, they can see this breakout session at ELC.
Tagging the individual
Yes.
Right.
blogs
Yes.
or whatever by
Yes.
those
Yes.
priority
Right,
areas.
and if you're already working with the priority areas, one of the things I have to say is there's some really nice infographics associated with the priority areas that are on the website. Innovation in Digital Government probably has the coolest one. It's this great big cloud with all these little things dropping out of it onto a digital phone, right? And then when you get into evolving the workforce, they have some graphics that I'm sure we could reuse as long as it's branded with ACT IAC. So instead of going out and spending your world trying to find new graphics, to keep that brand, if you do want to say planning management delivery for the planning and architecture committee, you can go out to ACT IAC's website and drag that graphic in, because it's a pretty nice graphic, right?
ACT, IAC strategic priorities.
Well,
You know, that the
these
SIG
are-
supports the ACT, IAC strategic priority areas in this area.
IAC strategic priorities, and you just pull it out. Planning, management, delivery, you pull it.
And but mention that, you know, as well, so that ties you back to these 4 key areas that ACT, IAC.
So I heard
Two
recommendations in
things.
sequence. One was it's too early.
I
And
think it's
exactly
too
how to
early
do
to
it.
get into too much detail, right? Because there's other things that we're waiting on in the priority areas. Well, it doesn't remove the mysticism, that's for sure. Because when I say the word priority area, everybody's going,
It may make us look more matrix oriented,
yes.
which is off-putting to some people who want to be more project oriented.
But if you want to pull a graphic in it,
All right.
and share the graphic, and then maybe when we go on the web, we could put a link to it without saying the words. Right now, I'm just a little reluctant. I mean, there's just so much hierarchy when we start.
Well,
looking
and
at it.
I wasn't advocating it, I was just asking, you know, whether it was time yet or whether.
Well, we actually had a conversation before you walked in. No, just salivating on it. Well,
Gee,
she had the exact
I
same
didn't replay the
suggestion.
tape that was underneath the stand.
Don't be so intimidating, Jonathan. please. Don't be so intimidating.
That's really well taken. I mean, the SIG really.
I have a 130 pound version that's less intimidating.
No, it's well taken because the SIG would really help themselves to show, to demonstrate or illustrate the traceability for the strategic priority areas, because that's really what the whole organization probably. You need to tie into that, or somehow explain why they're.
I agree that they do, but I don't think that they need to do that in a piece that's solely designed to recruit new members.
Yeah, interesting. You're right.
Yeah, I keep it simple, keep it a whole bunch of white space, and get your message.
Yeah, whenever like we design collateral for anybody, it's always one call to action per piece, if at all possible, and really try to sell one thing.
So we're getting towards the end of our allotted period, and where do we want to go next? Do the SIG chairs or leadership, does the SIG leadership want to follow on? Is there something you'd like to do, because we are going to focus this and present the video? Is there more help that you need? What would you like? And this is to the people on the phone too, so one at a time, yell at once.
Hey Sherry, it's Linda. I'll go first.
Thank you.
I think this is great. I would like to see more feedback on the benefits. When I was listening to you, I thought of several that I think would be really good. But I'd like to see what everybody else does after they, think about the stuff we learned today. Because I think if we can share, we're going to get better results that way. But I don't know that we need to spend a whole other session on it. This was great. I really appreciate it.
This is Tom McCullough from the Planning and Architecture SIG. I sort of view this exercise as like a paint team on proposal. It would be nice to see a selective red team on the next version before it goes to production, so to speak.
Well, if you mention it from the proposal point of view, earlier in this meeting we came up with the win themes and some discriminators, but it's different when you want to talk about it at the ACT-IAC level than at the individual SIG by SIG level, or even at the committee level below that. There are different tactical things that you would do. And what I liked about one of the things I liked about Sherry's reminding us about engage, learn, and lead is that I think that's memorable, and it does all of them address recruiting, which is part of what we were talking about. If these are really recruiting
Well,
vehicles.
you've probably got as much experience, you've probably equal experience. In a red team is where they take all the inconsistencies in the pink and sort of blend it together and get more consistency, more complete.
Yeah, and then they give the proposal team more work that they should have given to them before they're writing.
Yeah. What was that? What was the opposite of that, right?
Blue, red, pink, whatever you want.
The question would be, what happens after the red team is done? Now have all the SIGs revise their draft, so that things are, so across the SIGs, the next draft is more complete, more consistent, more coherent, more believable. Okay? Then where do we go from there? The intended outcome is, help me out here.
To recruit new members. But are you asking in terms of what's the deployment plan for these pieces?
Is it on the web, or just a hard copy collateral, or
Yes,
you give it to Jill?
yes.
All of the above?
Yeah, wherever we can get the message
I
out.
mean,
we'll-
when the idea being, you know, we had SIG meeting, when some of these evolve, like sign-in sheets and, you know.
If this becomes not just a one-shot deal, but a deal where each SIG updates their collateral when they have done something new or when they have some new challenge that has come from government, then these are short-lived, documents, and I think that we could overwork these and try to perfect them so much that we wouldn't get out to use them. And for example, I'd like to see this whole. Personally, I would guess you want this whole set available before MOC or maybe before the next general membership meeting.
I think it would be fantastic if they could be available before the next general membership meeting, which is.
Well, I realize
And
that.
the website update.
And the website has
Some
to
of
be
the
updated.
websites have no link to what you guys are talking
I realize, I don't know that that's feasible, but I think unless we set a short-term deadline, we'll all have something more important to do for our SIGs than this. And if you're really enthusiastic as the executive committee to get this done, then you need a challenge about, and to answer some of Tom's most recent questions.
And if you have a memory, John, that we're supposed to be helping the agencies, the analogy that comes to mind, on the government side, is they now have to do their annual campaign plan. Well, we lead by example, and this is our campaign plan, we consider it should be updated annually. I mean, I hesitate to say that, but it's kind of what I'm thinking. We can lead by example.
It really is supposed to be updated annually. In fact, if our information were available on an ongoing basis on the website, it is our responsibility at ACT-IAC to give you the environment and the infrastructure to do that. John has some stuff going with Mark, I believe, tomorrow to work with some of the SIG chairs to help them get over some hurdles. And I would really like to have this up before the next membership meeting.
What is that?
March 19th. March 19th. If we can get that done, I don't think there's a whole lot of lift to do on this.
No, and this is Adelaide, and this is for you. This is to get you more government folks engaged, more industry people engaged. This isn't for Sherry or me or
That's
DC.
right. This is for
really
you.
For you. And if you get more volunteers that are aligned with your mission and they know what you want to do and they're volunteering, then you can, reduce your workload, take on more projects. So this is really for you.
Would it be possible to do something virtually then, where as we finish up a draft, that we put it in a workspace so that others can see it? I just want to make sure that everyone, has the ability to use what other people put together to put together something for their sake.
John,
So if we just have workspace, that would be great.
There is a SIG leadership work area that, I'm not sure where we are in it. I know for sure that the chairs and the vice chairs all have access to it, and eventually everyone.
Can you hear John, Linda?
Yeah, I heard him. If you want to use Google Docs, I'm fine with that, but hopefully we can use the website.
And does everyone have that link? Could you send it out again, John?
It's in you need to log in, and it'll be right there in the
It's right there?
dashboard in the list of
Okay.
your communities. Again, if you're not a chair or a vice chair, I don't think it's working yet. I have a different view altogether, but it's one of the short list items that I'm working with Mark on.
And if we can, I'm going to keep track of people who actually see it and join afterwards. And so if we find out good things to that are working, I think we should, pass those on too. That would be helpful.
That's great.
But I know that's more informal than formal, but I think this has got a good shot at getting some people, so.
And Sharon, I would agree to, comments is we have a meeting with Mary David and very specific topic, and it's one from you all leadership clubs, having that delivered on their reviews. I mean, we're pretty far along, there's a few that the Tom we could do, but it really fun for
Well, I just think it's just so important. You guys have a huge chunk of our membership and organization to really focus on one thing, moving down a road very, very fast, high timeline, illustrate that. I think it's really cool.
And to Linda's point, a good marketing practice is to, measure some of the things that you do. So when you do get new members, you might want to ask them, hey, how'd you find out about this committee? And if they say it was the fabulous website with the wonderful benefits and the engagement and the promise that I could make a difference for myself in government, then you know that it's a difference.
Okay. Any comments? Any questions?
What about the
Right now, what's the schedule?
Yeah, so our April recurrence is,
Right now, it's scheduled.
will directly conflict with SPC. And so we were gonna ask you guys, do you wanna reschedule or just kick to next month? The
Well,
following.
here's my concern. I'm going to tell you my concern with just skipping the month. If we skip April, we're real close to the end of, we're real close one MOC. So I have a concern with skipping months, but I do want to hear from everybody else.
I don't think you skip.
I think we should. I'd rather skip, if I had to skip a month, I'd rather skip a month in which we had MOC and we were providing LC or something like that. Can we just, what was I think I sent you
We
a date
can-
for a reschedule. 17th or the 10th, right?
Yeah,
And I think I said, let's do a March, wait, geez, I'm looking at my calendar, that's just yeah. How's everybody do for the 17th? I think we rescheduled, what's going on the 17th? Yes, we can't do that on the 17th. Sorry. And FCA Bethesda, the 10th is
That morning,
the 17th, so the 17th is pretty much out.
And the 10th is acquisition management and capital.
there's a mobile IT workforce meeting. And then the
Dad,
third is-
come it.
The third is an Oxford conference.
What about Wednesday the 9th?
It's during, FCS Cyber. But it is Administrative Professionals Day.
That'd be a great reason to have it. Can you make one?
the two?
Yeah, the 9th, a Wednesday the 9th.
Sears, the secretary.
Yeah, see here, can everybody just, somebody check their calendar. I'm okay for it. I'm good for the 9th. It's a real fast turn.
I just try to know what's going on.
So, same time window.
Next session is this week.
Yeah, the next session would be,
So Wednesday, April 9th, from 1:30 to 3:30.
Yeah, there's a March one, that's the 27th. We're talking about April.
April 9th.
so close to the prior one.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, what about
all
the
right,
16th?
John, I know what you want to do. Never mind. What
Well,
about-
no, I wanna get consensus.
What
I think
about-
the 9th is too close. We're either have to look at the 16th or the 23rd.
Yeah, I had that week open.
And actually, the 23rd is Administrative Professional Day now.
That's what it said.
John, we do it at 3:27.
Oh, what about the 30th?
March 27th is on.
April 30th, Wednesday, April 30th.
Yeah, so the Wednesdays in April are all appear to be open. So
Yeah,
any of
I say we
those.
go for the 23rd. week were originally scheduled. Right? Let's go for the 23rd, same time, same place, same station.
John, you send out a notice?
All he has to do is mod the old one.
Make sure the address is.
Which day was the
Make
first
sure the
one?
address is right, yeah.
We should send it.
I don't know which one gets it. I'm
23rd of
guilty.
April. The original one gets 24th. April. No, April. April. Oh, you mean the March one? Oh, shoot. March was 27th.
That's my all-day whiz conference, John. We're not for PMIC, but Linda and,
Yeah, Rushton. Yeah, no, that's okay. Be almost a
especially
year to
since
do
my
it
daughter
right.
is, yeah, she corrected me just around a day.
Thank
Have a
you,
job.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good job.
Good job. Great job.
Thank you,
Very
Josh.
good job.
We're sorry
Thank
we
you.
restricted your,
Thank you,
your,
Josh.
your
Thank you, guys.
intellectual capabilities by giving you a boring template. Joshua.
Thank you.
Thank you.